Hi, in this lecture, I'm going to cause a problem and then I'm going to solve it by looking at the next aspect of book covers that we're going to work with, which is applying colored boxes. It's primarily used to make text stand out, but it also just adds visual interest to your book cover. Right now we have a pretty boring book cover. The text looks all right, but we need to get in there and get some images and some backgrounds and some stuff like that. So I'm going to revisit lecture number 1. If you remember, we went up to design, went to the far right, and clicked on Format Background, and then we came down and we did Picture or Texture Fill, and clicked File, and we chose this file to put in the background by double-clicking on it. And I wanted that to go away so that you could see the text. You can see that we have a problem now if I reapply that. The book cover instantly became more interesting, but it's harder to read the text. You can't even see the shadows or the reflections or any of that very well. And the reason for that is that it's a very complex background. Now, if we put colored boxes behind this text, then the text would stand out. So I'm going to show you how to use colored boxes in this lecture. Let's begin by putting a colored box coming out from the left-hand side and going part of the way across the book behind Shadow of the Night to make that stand out. To do that, I go to Insert, and I go over to, here we go, Shapes. Now, there's all kinds of shapes that I can insert. The most useful shape for us is the rectangle. And it's in the recently used shapes here. It's also down under rectangles. It's the far left. I can insert a rectangle with square corners, with rounded corners, all kinds of different rectangles. I'm just going to go with a standard square-cornered rectangle. So let's pick that tool. Now it turns into a cross, and what it's asking me to do is to draw from the upper left-hand corner to the lower right-hand corner the rectangular box. So I want it to start at this edge, so we'll click over here near the edge, and it snaps to the edge, and then I drag this rectangle, which is kind of see-through, so that I can see what's under it, out to where I'd like it to go, and that would be about here. There we go. We have a rectangle, and by default it's blue. We'd like it to be a color other than blue, since blue doesn't really match with our color scheme here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to solve that problem. The next problem that we're going to solve is the fact that you can't see the text. Okay, which problem actually do we want to solve first? Let's solve the color problem first. By default, shapes, which is what this is, can be configured on the format screen that pops up when the shape is selected. So anywhere in here, click on it. Notice that the crosshairs is anywhere on the shape, so I don't have to just click at the edge. I can click anywhere, okay? And that's because actually there's no text in here, but we're going to talk about text later. Let's just deal with the box now. Here I can change the fill. The fill is now green. Green fits this background much better, so that's actually a good choice just by default there. But if I use the pull down for fill or shape fill, I can change the color just like I could with text. So all of the changing of color options are there, including one that I'm going to show you right now called Eyedropper. Check this out. Check Eyedropper, and the cursor becomes an eyedropper, and I can drag it over things. It's showing me a sample of the color that I would select if I click the eyedropper on this background image. So I can pull colors out of the background image to use up there. Like if I want a green, there's a green. How about from right there? And the color changes to the color of the eyedropper because it's selected. Isn't that a neat way to choose colors for a box? Now it also has an outline color. Right now, the outline color that I've got selected is none. So we apply that, and the kind of grayish outline color that's the default disappears. By the way to get none is to select the color and go down here and say no outline. Okay, click on that. And that becomes the quick way to get to that now is to just click on this little icon over here. I don't have to click down and go to no outline, I could just click here and say no outline. Same with the color. The color becomes a fast path to it. Now, we've got the color of the box, right? The next problem that I'm going to solve is I'm going to move this box behind the text. Okay, now this takes a little explanation. Envision when you're making a book cover that you're laying down layers of things on the floor. The background is in the very back. That's as if we painted the floor. There's no way to get anything below the background. So this picture of this gully with the trees is the background. There's nothing behind it. Above that, we can stack various things, and they have shapes, like this text box. And it covers this area. It's transparent in certain areas except where the text is. This box, however, is a solid color. And it's laid over here, and below it is some text, and then below that is the background. So there are layers to things. Now, if I right-click on this box, I get the context menu, and I have Bring to Front and Send to Back as two options. I can also send backward, which means just send it back one level. If I send it all the way to the back, it's going to be just above the background. Actually, that's not a bad place to have it, so let's send to back. And suddenly our text appears. Now the reason is that this box is now in the very background, and the text is on top of it, so I can see the text. And everything around the text in this text box is transparent, so I can see through it to see the box. So I get this really nice effect. Now, let's take this box, select it, and duplicate it. I'm going to use the Control-C, Control-V method. Now, what I would like for this box is for it to be down here near Novel of Suspense, to stretch out beyond it, just beyond it, and to come up just under it, like that. So now I've got the same problem with this box that I had with the first box, that it's covering my text. So I right-click. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So I right-click. There we go. And I say, Send to Back. And that puts the box behind my text. So are you getting this idea of the layers? And, this might be better if it actually went all the way across. There we go. The layers and how you can move them up and down to expose things and to cover things. Right now we have a background of this leafy gully. We have two boxes just above it, and on top of that we have text. And then I can do the same thing for Brian Jackson. So I can go here and I can select the box. I'm going to use my Control-C, Control-V method to duplicate. Then I'm going to drag the box down to just above Brian Jackson. I'll then resize it to be the right size. I'll right-click on it to get the context menu. And this time I'm going to go to Send to Back, and I'm going to say Send Backward. This only sends it back one step. So rather than going all the way to the back, it goes, oh, and that wasn't enough, apparently. Okay, let me do this one more time. I'm going to send to back. And there you go. We pretty much have a book cover. I'm going to save and print this out as an example for the course. It'll be a downloadable material, both the PowerPoint file and the JPEG file, so you can take a look at it. In the next lecture, we're going to go over a few more details, but to tell you the truth, you pretty much have it by now. And we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. I want to cover two more quick topics before I let you go, and that is effects that we can apply to these boxes. So if I have this box selected, as I do, I can go up to Shape Effects. This is similar to the text effects that we looked at earlier. Remember, we had text effects of 3D rotation and stuff like that. Well, you can do shape effects too. So we can apply a shadow to this box. We can, one of the things that I really like is beveling the edges. So you can give a bevel, a rounded edge bevel, a kind of inset bevel. This is very subtle, so let me go ahead and apply that. And you can see the very subtle edge effect now that it has from being beveled. So that's one of the things that we can do to boxes, is apply text effects, or shape effects rather. They're equivalent to text effects, but for shapes. The other thing that I wanted to show you how to do is, actually it's being given away a little bit over here on the right. I want to show you how to make it to that panel that I just got rid of. If I'm on a shape, I can right-click to get the context menu. There we go. And I go down to Format Shape. And up pops the Format Shape pane. Now, this is a solid fill. I can do a gradient fill. I can do all of those things that I could do with the background to the shape. But what we're interested in now is something that we didn't want to touch with the background because there was nothing behind it, is opacity. Now there is something behind this box, and we can let it show through. At 0% opacity, that means that nothing shows through. If we drag this slider to the right, notice that the background begins to show through, which is an interesting effect. If we get that to just peek through a little, it's much more interesting than having solid boxes. So I can do that for each of these boxes. Just go through, select them, and set the opacity to near or exactly the same amount to allow the background to just peek through a little bit. And those were the last two effects that I wanted to show you with shapes. I'll see you in the next lecture.